카페는 세상 어디에도 없을걸? 한국은 분명 너에게 새로운 영감을 줄 거야.
이런 한국, 와보지 않고는 모를걸?
The rich colors and inspiring music of K-animation spark the imagination and capture the eyes and ears of children around the world. Non-violent Korean animation that focuses on good influence. Through adventure and friendship, learn valuable lessons and realize the importance of friends. Covering topics such as family, friends, and courage, they help children learn how to interact with the world. Embark on imaginative adventures with new friends and dream together. K-Animation's special stories will warm your heart.
President Yoon Suk-yeol's political future hangs in the balance as the parliament is set to vote on impeachment this afternoon over his abrupt martial law declaration. Without further ado, let's go live to our correspondent Kim Jung-sil at the National Assembly. Jung-sil, fill us in.
Tami, a highly charged day here at the National Assembly where President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment motion vote is set to take place from 5 p.m. Earlier today, the Democratic Party, that is the main opposition party, held an emergency meeting here at the Rotunda Hall, reaffirming their stance to pass the motion. Now, the math is also very crucial. In order for the motion to pass, they need at least 200 votes, that is two-thirds of the lawmakers, 300 lawmakers, to pass the motion. But the entire main opposition parties and the other opposition parties only hold up to 192 votes, which means they still need 8 votes from the ruling party. The main opposition Democratic Party and other opposition blocs, 6 parties in total, filed this impeachment motion, citing alleged constitutional violations tied to President Yoon's declaration of martial law on December 3rd. Now, we have spoken to a DP lawmaker, Kim Byung-ju. Take a listen to what he has to say.
I firmly believe the impeachment motion must go through today. Who is the most dangerous person in South Korea right now? It's Yoon Suk-yeol. As long as he remains president, the country faces daily instability and insecurity.
Jung-sil, then what about the internal dynamics within the ruling party? Are we expecting any defections?
Tami, that's a big question. So far, only 2 lawmakers from the ruling party, lawmaker An Chol-soo and Cho Kyung-tae, have officially declared that they are in favor of the impeachment vote. Lawmaker An, who played a pivotal role in the latest presidential election by conservative coalitions, issued a strong statement urging President Yoon to step down. Here's what he had to say yesterday.
I urge President Yoon to announce his resignation plan before tomorrow's vote. If he doesn't, I will have no choice but to support the impeachment motion. I will follow the will of the people.
On the other hand, while PPP leader Han Kang hinted at supporting impeachment just yesterday, the party reaffirmed its official stance of opposing the motion after a 10-hour meeting last night. However, divisions within the party suggest that defections are still possible, and I think at the moment they have postponed their early morning meeting to listen to what the president has to say in a few moments.
Right, Chung-soo, like you mentioned, most importantly, a major address by President Yoon is on the way in the coming minutes. Now, tell us what you have discovered so far.
Tammy, we are just learning that President Yoon is about to address the nation from 10 a.m. Today. That's in about 8 minutes. While details are unclear, all eyes are on what he has to say in this critical moment. But the Democratic Party just announced like 10 minutes ago that they reject any proposal that will allow him to maintain his post in case he talks about shortening his term or something like that. And the DP has strongly urged to go through with the impeachment motion later this afternoon nonetheless. Now, if the impeachment motion passes later today, President Yoon's duties will be suspended and Prime Minister Han Kang will take over his duties. Now, if it doesn't pass, the Democratic Party plans to reintroduce the motion in the near future. Now, that's all I have for now. Back to you, Dami.
Alrighty, Jung-soo, do keep us posted. Thanks for the report. And large political rallies, both for and against President Yoon, are set to sweep across the capital city in the run-up to the impeachment vote. We have our Eun out in Yeouido, where the voting is taking place. Now, Eun, how are looking things as of this morning?
Yes, Tommy, right now I'm here at the National Assembly in Yeongdeung-pogu District, Seoul, where protests calling for President Yoon Suk-yeol's resignation have been taking place for the past few days. Take a look behind me. Large-scale protests are scheduled for later this afternoon, but the atmosphere here is already intense, with people voicing their demands for the president's impeachment. The cold weather didn't stop the angry citizens from coming out to the streets, so let's take a listen to what some of them have to say.
I came today with the hope that Yoon Suk-yeol will be impeached.
Martial law in Korean history is closely tied to military dictatorship, and I don't want my family or friends to experience that. Seeing the courage of citizens who spoke up when it was first declared inspired me to come out today.
Later today at 3 p.m., a large rally and march demanding the resignation of the president is to be held with about 200,000 participants expected. Originally planned for Gwanghwamun Square in central Seoul, the protest was moved to the National Assembly due to the anticipated impeachment vote. Before the main rally, the Korean Confederation of Trade Unions will hold a pre-rally at 2 p.m., demanding the impeachment of President Yoon and continuing its strong opposition to the government. A large counter-protest by organizations in support of President Yoon is also planned across the country, including here near the National Assembly and around Gwanghwamun Square. One of the rallies near the National Assembly is expected to draw around 20,000 people, with protesters opposing the impeachment. The Liberty Unification Party and other groups will also hold a rally in the afternoon in central Seoul, where they will label the impeachment vote as illegal.
Eun, it's only 10 a.m. and it looks like we are going to see hectic scenes throughout the day. And already a candlelight protest returned to Gwanghwamun Square this week. And, last night was no exception, right?
Yes, Tommy, on Friday, a candlelight protest calling for President Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment was held again in front of the National Assembly. Generations from all age, young to old, came together to voice their demands and call for a better democratic society. According to organizers, around 50,000 people gathered on Friday, and earlier protests in Gwanghwamun on Wednesday and Thursday also saw thousands of attendees. With large protests taking place, the police will control traffic in parts of Seoul and several roads will be blocked.
Already, that was our Eun live from Yeouido, just outside the National Assembly. Thank you, Eun, for the report. So, President Yoon Suk-yeol is set to speak for the first time since the night of the martial law order. While we wait for that, we are joined by our correspondent, Eun-ji. Welcome, Eun-ji.
Thanks for having me.
So, no official comment as of 10 a.m. yet, but he did speak to the ruling party's leader, Han Kang, yesterday. Let's recap the meeting.
That's right. The ruling party leader Han Kang had previously refrained from pushing for Yoon's impeachment. But on Friday morning, Han said the president needs to be immediately suspended from performing his duties in a dramatic reversal. He added that this is needed to protect the country and South Koreans from grave danger.
Yesterday, I said I would work to prevent the impeachment of President Yoon Suk-yeol to avoid unnecessary harm to the public and supporters. However, given the new facts that have come to light, I now believe it is crucial to swiftly suspend President Yoon from his duties to protect the country and its people.
After making such comments, Han visited President Yoon at his official residence for a talk on Friday upon Yoon's request. Han did not give many details about the meeting, but said he did not hear anything that would overturn his judgment, implying that his stance remains firm on Yoon's suspension of power. Han is not an elected member of the parliament, so he doesn't have a vote at today's session, but since his stance will have much influence on the pro-Han members within the ruling Conservative Party, so his latest comments do signal that support for Yoon is wavering within his own party.
Well, Eun-ji, the ruling People Party resumed the meeting this morning, but in the meantime, let's talk about the meeting that happened yesterday that lasted for more than 10 hours, right?
That's right. The ruling Conservative Party meeting, which began at 11 a.m. yesterday, lasted until 11 p.m. Although the party's leader called for the suspension of President Yoon's powers, the party spokesperson Shin Dong-wook said there was no mention of changing the party stance and said their position remains on opposing the impeachment of Yoon.
There were talks about the president and about the political situation in the future, but there were no talks about making changes to the party's stance.
For the opposition party to pass the impeachment bill, they need at least 8 votes from the ruling party in favor of impeaching Yoon, as we saw in the previous report. So although we have just several hours left.
So, Eun-ji, it looks like President Yoon is about to deliver his national address. We'll come back right afterwards.
저는 12월 3일 밤 11시를 기해 비상계엄을 선포했습니다. 약 2시간 후 12월 4일 오전 1시경 국회의 계엄 해제 결의에 따라 군의 철수를 지시하고 심야 국무회의를 거쳐 계엄을 해제하였습니다. 이번 비상계엄 선포는 국정 최종 책임자인 대통령으로서의 절박함에서 비롯되었습니다. 하지만 그 과정에서 국민들께 불안과 불편을 끼쳐드렸습니다. 매우 송구스럽게 생각하며 많이 놀라셨을 국민 여러분께 진심으로 사과드립니다. 저는 이번 계엄 선포와 관련하여 법적, 정치적 책임 문제를 회피하지 않겠습니다. 국민 여러분, 또다시 계엄이 발동될 것이라는 얘기들이 있습니다마는 분명하게 말씀드립니다. 제2의 계엄과 같은 일은 결코 없을 것입니다. 국민 여러분, 저의 임기를 포함하여 앞으로의 전국 안정 방안은 우리 당에 일임하겠습니다. 향후 국정 운영은 우리 당과 정부가 함께 책임지고 해 나가겠습니다. 국민 여러분께 심려를 끼쳐드린 점 다시 한번 머리 숙여 사과드립니다.
Already, that was President Yoon's national public address apologizing for causing concerns of his people. And he also said there will be no second martial law during his term. Now, let's go back to our Pei Eun-ji here in the studio. So, Eun-ji, let's pick up where we left things off.
Right. We just heard the president apologize for his declaration of martial law, but the Democratic Party's stance remains firm. The Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung questioned President Yoon's state of mind after the martial law chaos in an interview with the Associated Press on Friday. Take a listen.
A more dangerous part of a recent martial law situation is the state of the mind of the president, who decided to do something that no one understands, rather than the fact that he did it.
He also said President Yoon has practically been removed from office as he already appears to have lost his authority as president. He also vowed to make all-out efforts to get the president impeached, saying that Yoon's decision to declare martial law this week suggests that he could make other extreme moves. Separately, in an interview with Reuters, he also said the only way to tackle the situation is to impeach President Yoon, unless he resigns.
Alrighty, indeed, we'll have to get back to you on the more developments throughout the day. Thanks for the report for now.
Thank you.
So, President Yoon Suk-yeol just delivered or spoke for the first time since the night of the martial law order. We have our presidential office correspondent Kim Do-yeon on the line. Do-yeon, let's recap the national address.
Right. I mean, it was a very short address after a long time of build-up. But first, I got to mention that he's apologized for what happened, and most importantly, he said he's going to yield all administrative power to the party. So now we don't know exactly what this means and who will be in charge of this country from this point on, but we do know that's what he said, and that there will never be another martial law under his authority. So that's all we know so far. Now, he's apologized, and that the party and the Yoon administration will go together. But he did say that he's going to yield all his authorities to the party, and he won't avoid the responsibilities and the consequences that from what the public chaos that he had caused a few days ago. Now, this is the first time Yoon showed himself since he last appeared on TV to lift the martial law following National Assembly's vote to do so, which was early Wednesday morning. For the past couple of days, he stayed away from the public appearance, and there were reports that he met with the ruling People Power Party, Han Kang, and all the other stuff that we don't know what really went on. And now the top office is waiting for the vote to happen. But as of now, so again, we know that President Yoon made it public that his authority will be yielded to the ruling People Power Party. That's all for now. I'll be back with more in a later cast.
Please do, Do-yeon. Thank you for that coverage. Now, there has been a speculation that there may be a second martial law order, but President Yoon himself said there will be no second one. And the Defense Ministry says that there will be no second one under any circumstances, reassuring the public. Our Kim Bo-kyung reports.
Acting Defense Minister Kim Sun-ho addressed concerns over the possibility of a second martial law order, denying claims raised on Friday.
Even if there were any demands for martial law to be declared, the Ministry of Defense and the Joint Chiefs of Staff would never accept them.
Minister Kim apologized for the confusion caused by this week's martial law declaration. He pledged full cooperation with the upcoming investigation by the prosecution, including dispatching military prosecutors for a joint inquiry. Kim also instructed relevant agencies to preserve original documents and prevent any tampering with them. This was followed by the Archives Agency's request to the Presidential Office and Defense Ministry to preserve all documents related to martial law declaration. After Acting Minister Kim's statement, the Defense Ministry removed 3 senior military officers linked to the December 3rd imposition of martial law. The commanders of the Capital Defense, Special Warfare, and Defense Security Commands have been suspended from their duties and transferred to other units. The ministry has sent applications to the Ministry of Justice for travel bans to be placed on 10 military officials facing treason and other charges related to martial law, including these 3 commanders. Two of these commanders have already spoken out. In a YouTube interview with lawmaker Kim Byung-ju, Army Special Warfare Command Commander Kwak Jong-geun revealed that former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun instructed him to remove lawmakers from the plenary session and that President Yoon followed up on the operation. Capital Defense Command Commander Lee Jin-woo also stated that President Yoon contacted him about the National Assembly situation. Meanwhile, Hong Jang-won, the first deputy director of the NIS, revealed that after martial law was declared, President Yoon personally instructed him to arrest the key political figures and, quote, clean up. Hong made the statement during his appearance at the National Assembly on Friday. The director, Cho Tae-yong, however, said he received no direct orders from Yoon about arresting any politicians, contradicting Hong's claims. The National Assembly's Intelligence Committee is expected to hold a plenary session on Saturday to conduct an urgent inquiry into this issue. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
And for the first time in 8 years, the prosecution has set up a special task force to investigate allegations involving the president. Our Moon Hae-ryun has the details.
The South Korean prosecution has established a special investigation headquarters to lead the inquiry into the allegations against President Yoon. This task force, made up of 20 prosecutors headed by Park Se-hyun, chief prosecutor of the Seoul High Prosecutor's Office, includes military prosecutors for enhanced expertise and will be established at the Seoul Eastern District Prosecutor's offices. The move reflects the gravity of the case, with President Yoon himself under scrutiny. This case stems from accusations filed by opposition parties and civic groups, and the charges include insurrection and abuse of power. Insurrection is an organized attempt to overthrow a government or its leaders, and a president in South Korea can be impeached if found guilty of insurrection as it violates constitutional law. Despite legal challenges regarding jurisdiction, the prosecution concluded that the case falls within their investigative authority due to overlapping charges. Meanwhile, the National Police Agency has launched its own 120-member task force to investigate the case. The police disclosed that it has received 4 separate complaints related to the martial law declaration, involving figures such as President Yoon, now former Defense Minister Kim Yong-hyun, Interior Minister Lee Sang-min, and top police officials. The police claims jurisdiction over insurrection-related investigations and has expressed its commitment to accelerating the probe. The Corruption Investigation Office, or CIO, is also involved, focusing on related charges like abuse of power. While the agency cannot investigate insurrection directly, it has mirrored the prosecution and police by issuing a travel ban on former Defense Minister Kim, who is accused of advising the president to declare martial law. Adding to the complexity, the Democratic Party has proposed a bill for a special prosecutor to oversee the case. A special prosecutor is appointed when there is a conflict of interest that could prevent the prosecuting authority from investigating a case, and the bill is expected to be reviewed in the National Assembly on December 10th. If approved, the special prosecutor would take over all investigative materials from existing agencies. However, delays could arise. The president's refusal to appoint a special prosecutor would not carry penalties, and assembling a new investigative team could take months. Experts warn that overlapping investigations could lead to inefficiencies and confusion. With multiple agencies now engaged in this high-profile case, the investigations into the martial law incident mark an unprecedented moment in South Korea's constitutional history. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
We have less than 7 hours left until the impeachment vote takes place this afternoon. How does a presidential impeachment process work here in South Korea? Our Choi Soo-hyung walks us through.
On Thursday, 6 opposition parties jointly submitted a motion to impeach President Yoon to the National Assembly. According to the National Assembly Act, the vote must take place between 24 and 72 hours after submission, which means it will occur between Friday and Sunday Korean time. The opposition has scheduled the vote for Saturday afternoon, appearing to have decided to wait for any objections from the ruling party. The Democratic Party explained that this delay gives the ruling People Power Party enough time to consider the motion. For the impeachment to pass, at least 2/3 of the 300 lawmakers, at least 200, must approve it. Currently, there are 192 lawmakers, the main opposition Democratic Party and others, who support the motion to impeach the president. This means at least 8 votes are needed from the ruling People Power Party for the motion to pass. As tactical moves continue regarding impeachment for President Yoon, if the motion passes in the National Assembly on Saturday, it will mark the 3rd presidential impeachment motion in South Korea's constitutional history, following Roh Moo-hyun in 2004 and Park Geun-hye in 2016. If the National Assembly approves the motion, the final decision on impeachment will then be determined by the Constitutional Court. Choi Soo-young, Arirang News.
And this isn't the first time a South Korean leader is facing a full House impeachment vote. But what makes this time any different or possibly even more complex than what the country went through in 2004 and 2016? Let's turn to Professor Lee Hyun this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, good morning. It's good to be with you.
So President Yoon just offered a public apology over his martial law order on Tuesday. Now, Professor Lee, does that mean the impeachment motion vote and the investigation against him will proceed as planned?
You have to think so, because the Democratic Party indicated, regardless of what he says or what he had to offer, they're going to go ahead with the vote. So we should fully expect that later this afternoon, they will go forward with the vote on the motion to impeach.
Already then, President Yoon, in fact, he is the 3rd leader to face impeachment proceedings at the National Assembly. But the question is, what makes this case any different from the ones against, former Presidents Park Geun-hye and also Roh Moo-hyun?
Right. There's a very different character with respect to what he's been charged with. So if you look at the Roh Moo-hyun situation, there was an issue about political neutrality. The Constitution required neutrality, and he came forward with advocating for his own party, and so in that context, it was the constitutional issue, but of a very different character. But in terms of Park Geun-hye, that was an issue of corruption. There was a political scandal, as you know, and about influence peddling, questions about donations to a foundation, Choi. So that situation involved corruption and scandal. But here we're talking about insurrection and treason, which is obviously raised the stakes with respect to the kinds of crimes that he's been charged with under the Constitution. And therefore, I think you're going to see a very different approach to how this impeachment will be played out.
Well, Professor Lee, you have to tell us more about the legal term insurrection. What can lead to somebody be charged with insurrection in this case, against the South Korean leader?
Right. So the Constitution does provide that you can be kicked out of office for insurrection, and you can be charged with a crime. Whereas, generally presidents enjoy immunity. So under Korea's criminal law, the Criminal Act, there in Article 87, there's a definition of insurrection, which is a person who creates violence for the purpose of usurping national territory or subverting the Constitution shall be punished. And so therefore, in this context, there's some sort of context of saying, hey, you're subverting the Constitution, the constitutional process as president. Therefore, you should be tried for insurrection. And so that, I think, is the main target with respect to any prosecution if the president does face criminal prosecution in this regard.
Well, speaking of insurrection, let's compare the insurrection charges against former President Chun Doo-hwan and also Roh Tae-woo and the Supreme Court's precedents from the past. What makes Yoon's martial law order different this time?
Well, I think there's similarities and differences here, right? So the context of Chun Doo-hwan and Roh Tae-woo in terms of their charges of insurrection and treason was in relationship to the coup d'etat in 1979. And then, of course, they had the declaration of martial law to subdue this National Assembly and suppress the Gwangju uprising. So there was a whole set of circumstances there where there was a lot of just physical violence in ordering the military to engage citizens in that context. But here, similarly, and maybe different in some sense, but not to say it's less serious, but the National Assembly was a target, right? Because here we had the martial law troops entering the National Assembly, and apparently, at least in terms of what we've been hearing in terms of reporting, there was threats of arresting politicians. So in that sense, there are similarities insofar as the National Assembly was targeted in both contexts with respect to these presidents. And so therefore, there are a lot of comparisons here to be made, but I think the main one has to be suppressing addressing the National Assembly and violating the constitutional order.
And nonetheless, the opposition camp says it'll push for further impeachment motion, saying it's not a one-shot deal. Does that mean? I'm afraid to say that it's going to be a long fight, right, between the opposition camp and President Yoon.
Absolutely. If the ruling party members don't vote, if you don't get those 8 votes, because as you reported, 192 votes probably in favor of impeachment, so you need at least 200. So they need 8 defections from the ruling party. But if they don't get it this time, they can indefinitely call upon these motions. And you have to think that because of maybe public opinion, the ruling party will have to maybe think through that issue in terms of whether or not they should be in favor of defending the president. But as far as bringing motions are concerned, the opposition party, because they control the National Assembly, they can bring these motions almost indefinitely.
Well, once the impeachment motion is passed, it will move on to the Constitutional Court eventually. Now, yesterday, I talked to Professor Lee about this, missing 3 constitutional judges to conduct hearings and decisions. But do remind us, theoretically speaking, that shouldn't be a problem, right?
Well, there's an issue there because under the Constitutional Court Act, under Article 80, under Article 22, there has to be a full bench with respect to any adjudication that's being pursued by the court. Now, as you know, there's a total of 9 justices that can sit on the Constitutional Court, but the procedures of the court require at least 7 to constitute a full bench. And so, because we don't have 7 justices here, then you cannot establish quorum for adjudication. And therefore, with only 6 justices in place, you really cannot proceed with a trial if impeachment does in fact happen, because that would violate the Constitutional Court Act. So I think in this context, this will be another sort of wrinkle in this whole impeachment process. If it does in fact go through, is what happens to that 7th justice? Will that person be appointed in time for the impeachment trial to actually happen?
Professor Lee, we'll have to get back to you on the further developments in the near future. For now, thanks so much for connecting with us once again this morning. We appreciate it.
It was my pleasure.
And the U.S. is also closely following the developments here in the country. It's reaffirmed its strong alliance with South Korea, saying Seoul-Washington partnership goes beyond any particular leadership. Choi Min-jung has this report.
Amid concerns about bilateral relations with the United States, South Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Tae-yeol on Friday held a phone call with his American counterpart Antony Blinken. The Foreign Ministry said the two sides reaffirmed their commitment to the strong alliance between the two countries, adding that Blinken highly valued the strong resilience of South Korea's democracy and expressed hope that any future political disagreements will be resolved through peaceful and democratic processes. The U.S. State Department deputy spokesperson also said on Thursday that the partnership transcends any particular president or government on both sides. When asked about the South Korean parliament's push to impeach the president, he called the impeachment motion an internal process and said the U.S. expects it to be handled in accordance with the Constitution.
We continue to support the rule of law and democracy in the ROK, which we think are the foundational pillars of our alliance.
But he said many questions are yet to be answered and said developments in South Korea are being watched with grave concern.
What I can say is that we were not notified of President Yoon's announcement in advance.
White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan had also said the U.S. learned about it on television, the same way the rest of the world did, implying that the country was caught off guard by its key ally. He told a Washington-based think tank that it was a rather dramatic announcement and that the U.S. was not consulted in any way. There have been concerns that this week's martial law attempt may disrupt the alliance with the U.S. after the U.S. Deputy Secretary of State Kurt Campbell said President Yoon badly misjudged his decision to declare martial law, in a rare criticism of a South Korean leader. Campbell even said the move had been seen as deeply problematic and illegitimate. Citing 2 U.S. officials, Reuters reports that U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin no longer plans to travel to South Korea amid the political turmoil. The outgoing Defense Secretary had reportedly planned to travel to Seoul and Tokyo next week, but he will skip South Korea and only visit Japan. Seoul and Washington also postponed a session of the Nuclear Consultative Group, which is their key nuclear deterrence talks, and canceled a related military exercise that was initially scheduled to take place this week. Choi Min-jung, Arirang News.
The political crisis in Korea has drawn attention all the way from Sweden as well, where Nobel Week is underway. Just yesterday, Korean author and Nobel laureate Han Kang addressed the situation during a press conference. Our culture correspondent Song Yoo-jin reports from Stockholm.
December 3rd was a night of shock for many in Korea, including author Han Kang, this year's Nobel laureate in literature. Currently in Stockholm for Nobel Week, Han shared their thoughts on Korea's political turmoil during a press conference on Friday, a subject she found deeply personal.
To write Human Acts, I studied the martial law situation from late 1979. Witnessing martial law unfold again in 2024 was startling. But what was different this time was how everything was broadcast live for everyone to see in real time.
Human Acts explores Korea's painful history during the 1980 democratization movement in Gwangju City. The movement arose as a response to the brutal military suppression that followed martial law in 1979. Although the martial law declaration this time lasted only a few hours, Han says what she witnessed left a profound impact.
I saw people trying to stop armored vehicles with their bodies, others holding back soldiers with their hands, and some standing firm against advancing troops with guns. As the soldiers withdrew, some even called out, "Take care," like they were saying goodbye to their sons. I could feel their sincerity and courage.
What also struck her was the difference in the behavior of police officers and soldiers compared to the violence of 1979.
They seem to be grappling with the unexpected situation, trying to make their own judgments while holding back as much as possible. From the perspective of their commanders, it might have looked passive, but I saw it as an active effort, thinking, feeling, and searching for a solution grounded in universal values.
Han also offered her thoughts on what role literature can play during times of crisis.
I sincerely hope we don't return to the past where force and suppression silence the press. Literature allows us to delve into the inner lives of others while exploring our own. This process builds the strength to think, judge, and act decisively in difficult moments. Literature isn't something extra, it's essential.
Han will continue her Nobel Week schedule on Saturday, this time meeting the public at her Nobel Prize lecture. Song Yoo-jin, Arirang News, Stockholm.
That wraps up our special coverage on impeachment motion vote against President Yoon Suk-yeol. We'll be back with more updated developments at 2 p.m. Korea time. Until then, goodbye.